Hey folks, this is the 19DX. It's purple Urkel accents, the cap, and then this stem connection, which gives you a place to hold on to for rotation. So I'm going to go through the process making one of these. It's pretty involved. Start with the cap. The cap just starts in a long tube, and tubes have to be cut down to length so they'll fit in the kiln. Then they must be washed, dried, and cleaned with glass cleaner. And the tubes are torched a little ways back until you get a glowing ring, and then when the ring is glowing, you grab the little stub of tube that's left with a pair of tweezers, and as you continue to twirl to keep it centered, you pull off that piece. And it is secured back in the torch, and then it is flattened. Have this trademark flattening of the cap. If there's frit being added, then before you flatten it, you heat it red hot so it picks up this frit. And you just dunk it in the frit and then go back to the torch, and depending on how much torch time you spend melting this in, it'll either be flat like this one, and then you get some depth to the frit, or on some of them I've left the frit bumpy on top. So once that piece is done, again, it's still on the tube. The entire tube is put in the kiln to relieve the stress. That's an overnight process, and there's only so many pieces you can fit in the kiln. Then you have this long tube. You have to take the tube, bring it to the saw cut it once, and then skim cut it to eliminate any major chips that were from the sawing operation. Then once again, it has to be washed and dried and then cleaned with glass cleaner. It then goes back to the torch. It gets this polish on the end where it was cut. Pretty quick to do, but then again it has to go back through the kiln overnight. And then we have our cap that's finished. However, we need to grind out the ID, so that is done by hand, and that finishes the cap. All right, next we have the stem. Stem is made up of two pieces. This is a US 1926 joint, 2.5 millimeters, so it's pretty thick. So all this stuff is thick, needs a lot of extra heat, torch time to work it, but I think it's worth it. So this piece is cut to length and then washed and dried, and then this piece as well is also cut, washed and dried, and then Windexed, and then we put this light polish here. It has to be slight so that when your screen goes in, it doesn't become too small going through the reduced opening and then not fit the tube. So this one's tricky, this polish is tricky. And then by hand, the center is heated, and I fabricated a special pinch tool. Puts that pinch in there, and then sometimes it oversizes. It's hard to get this exactly correct. So then I come back in and size it. Then this goes in the kiln, gets fired and yields, relieves the stress, and then once that is done, you have this part finished, this part ready to go, and then heat both ends very carefully and by eye glue them together as exactly as possible, and then straighten it out, anneal the entire piece, and then that goes into the kiln. That comes out a finished piece. And then there is this screen, has this lip on it. So this screen is cut by hand and folded, then formed round, and then put into another special tool I made This is a new addition for the 19DX. We have that little lip on the screen, so it keeps it from sliding in use. See how that grabs the edge right there. And then final clean with isopropyl alcohol, the glass parts. Also isopropyl clean all of the screens before inserted. And that gives you the final piece, a 19DX.